I am Laura Dixon, and you are listening to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast, episode number 235, Changing Long-Term Food Habits When Other People Are Involved. Welcome to the Naturally Thin for Life podcast. Get ready to learn how to live in your dream body, free from all the diet rules. You're going to learn the naturally thin mindset and strategies so that you never need to count, track, or measure your food ever again. And instead, you get to live the rest of your life at your body's optimal weight with the peace and freedom you've been craving. Let's dive in. Hello, friends. Welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm going to share with you how I suggest that you can approach changing long-term food habits when there are other people involved, as the title of the podcast episode would suggest. And the reason I wanted to share this is because so often we as humans connect to other people when food is present and when food is involved. And we can kind of easily, I think, develop habits over years or decades with other people where food is seemingly central to that connection with other people. And this can be especially prevalent when you have a long-standing food habit with someone that you live with. So maybe someone you're intimate with, your spouse, your partner, maybe your kids. And my guess is that a lot of you listening had food habits and long-term food habits when you were a child, that you engaged in those types of habits with your parents. And maybe you have continued some of those habits, and maybe you still even have some of those same old habits when you're around your parents, even though you're a grown adult today. And what can happen when this has become part of our life is our brain can start to believe that the food is what creates the connection with these other people. And then when we want to make a change, it can be hard to break some of those habits, even though they're not habits we want long term. But we find ourselves kind of stuck in this lose-lose situation because in our own minds, we think, well, if I stop engaging in this habit, I'm therefore going to lose some of my connection with this other person, which you don't want, but simultaneously, you want to change the habit. So you feel like you can't win. So I want to talk about how to approach any long-term food habits that you have with other people and when other people are involved. And it's just really important to remember that our brain thinks the food has created that connection. And it makes sense when we've been engaging in a habit for years or decades that we have food that's present and our brain will start to kind of make assumptions about, well, it's the environment that creates the connection. It's the presence of the food that creates the connection. It's the fact that we're eating together that makes the connection. That's why we are feeling connected. But our ability to create human connection is so much more vast than that. And human connection cannot be there without the human. So the food itself can't create the connection, right? It's the humans that create the connection. And really, it's an association our brain has made where our brain associates the food with the connection. The food is not the causation of the connection. And it's just really important to let your brain see how that is true. That we've associated food with connection or intimacy or love or whatever way you've associated food in any long-term habit when other people are involved, versus understanding that it is not actually caused by the food. It is simply an association our brain has made between the food and the connection. It's not the cause of the connection. The food is not the cause. So a common example of this is eating together in front of the TV. So whether you did this as a child, whether you do this with your own family that you live with in the same dwelling place, whether you do this with your partner or your spouse or someone you've been dating, or whether you do this with your kids, or maybe you did this with your parents when you were growing up and now every time you go to visit them, you always sit down and eat in front of the TV together. There are, of course, a ton of other examples that may be present in your life. And so you can apply what I'm going to share to any long-term food habit that you want to break when other people are involved. But the example I'm going to use, because it is an example that I've experienced, and it's just a very common example that I hear from people, that they just get used to eating in front of the TV a lot of times with the people that they live with and sometimes by themselves. And it's a habit that they may want to break. And what I talk about here on the podcast sometimes, and as well that we've dived deeper into inside of the Naturally Thin for Life membership, is the idea of eating as distraction-free as possible when you are relearning the skill of getting to know your body. Not because the intent is to eat peacefully and calmly and be completely zen and to have no noise or no one else around you and to be kind of in a meditative state while you're eating. Now, if that's something you enjoy and you want to do that, that's great. But the intention is not to eat in some sort of unrealistic way. The intent of eating as distraction-free as possible, especially as you're getting to know your body, is so that you can actually hear your body's own cues. So often they go unnoticed. We haven't practiced listening to them. They can sound quiet. They can be faint. We don't know how to listen to them. And when your brain is watching TV or listening to a podcast or distracted with 5 kids at the dinner table telling you they want this and they don't like this, whatever the distraction is, it makes it really, really challenging in an unnecessary way for you to get to know your body. And so with whatever you have sometimes associated as what you like to do as far as an activity while you're eating, I highly suggest that you take a period of time where you remind yourself this isn't necessarily something you're doing forever, but a lot of people actually find they really enjoy eating as distraction-free as possible, because then they actually enjoy their food even more. But in the beginning, when you're used to maybe eating in front of the TV all of the time, a lot of our brains do not want to let that go. And I get it. I used to eat in front of the TV, and every time I would sit down to watch TV, my brain would automatically be like, what are we going to eat? It had just, the association had become so strong and so habitual. And I'm not over-exaggerating when I say this. When I then intellectually wanted to eat with less distractions, I kind of made a commitment to myself that I was going to do that. And I remember the first couple of times sitting down to eat without the TV on, and it was frightening to my brain in a very kind of odd way, more so than I had anticipated. My brain did not want to make that change. Now, I knew long term I was going to be grateful I had made that. But in that moment, my brain was freaking out. Oh my gosh, this is terrible. It did not want to pay attention to my body. I felt so much anxiety. And I was like, what is this about? So for me, in breaking any habit, especially when I was breaking the habit of eating with the TV on, I told myself, listen, self, we don't have to do this forever. We're just going to try it out today. And it's not like I'm not going to watch the TV. I'm just going to do it after I've eaten. So I'm just going to take a couple of minutes, and it actually doesn't really take that long to eat. Even if you eat slowly and consciously, for most people, it doesn't take an hour to eat. For me, I can eat pretty slowly and consciously, and it's 5 to 10 minutes because I'm just usually not eating that much food. And so you can do that and then watch the TV. So it's not necessarily an either or. And that really helped my brain when I was breaking these very strong habits where I was like, okay, brain, we're just doing this for today. We're just going to see how it goes today and notice what happens today. But there can be kind of an added layer of discomfort and challenge when someone else is involved. So if you are used to, in the example, again, I'm going to use throughout, eating in front of the TV with someone else, then there's not just you and your brain, there's the other person and their brain. So when you know and you think about yourself long term, and you just know that version of you in the future, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, that version of you who's at your ideal weight, who feels so peaceful and free and calm around food, and you know that version of you doesn't really eat in front of the TV as habitually, or that version of you, maybe she does sometimes, but she's really grateful that you took a period of time to take a break from that so that you could retune in and really get to know your body's hunger cues, how food truly tastes, and to really be able to easily stop eating. And when there's a habit with a distraction while you're eating, it really can make it so challenging to be able to stop eating when you've reached your optimal satisfaction point. And that association can kind of make you want to keep watching TV and therefore keep eating just for the sake of kind of perpetuating what can sometimes be a comforting habit. So let's say it's you and someone you live with that are used to watching TV together. And let's say it's you and an intimate partner. And so you enjoy feeling connected to them. You want to feel connected to them and you love them. And this is just something that you typically do. You just both get home from work, let's say. You make your dinner or you have whatever you're going to have, and then you kind of take that and you move over to wherever the TV is and you sit down and you spend a lot of time maybe watching TV together. And then you realize, okay, this is a change that you may want to make, and you may be listening to this podcast and you may be thinking, I want to implement some of what we're talking about here. And you realize that yourself long-term doesn't have this habit anymore, or like I said, takes a temporary break from it. And so you want to make a change. And let's say then one evening you start to eat not in front of the TV, or you start to eat separately, or you even want to make that change, but you feel an internal kind of tug of war because you don't want to upset your partner, or you don't want them to think that they're doing something wrong, or you feel guilty, like, but this is our only time to see each other because we both work all day, whatever it is. Or maybe it's after the kids go to bed and you and your partner sit down and you have snacks in front of the TV for, 2 hours before you go to bed, whatever that, long-term habit is. So if this is you, then you kind of have this battle that you need to reconcile for yourself. And I suggest that if that's a change you want to make, that you maybe have a conversation with your partner about it and why it's important to you. And maybe in the kind of best of scenarios, they totally get on board and they're like, great, let's do it together. And then you start eating your meal at a table and you start talking about your day and feeling connected in that way. And then you go watch your TV afterwards, right? Maybe that's how it plays out in an ideal world. But a lot of times that isn't how it plays out, because just like it's challenging for us, it's also challenging for other people to change their habits, and they may not want to change their habits. So I'm not saying don't have a conversation with whoever you are kind of changing a long-term habit with when food is involved. Totally do that. But you can't force them to make a change, right? And imagine if someone was trying to force you to make a change. If someone's trying to force me to make a change, it's a no way. I will rebel against that all day. It doesn't feel great and it doesn't work, right? We can't make other people make a change when they don't want to. So if that's kind of the boat you're in, where you want to make a change, you want to stop eating in front of the TV, but your partner doesn't, then what do you do? And a lot of times I think we can stay stuck in that habit because we're so worried about what if we lose that connection? What if we make them feel bad? They're going to not like what I'm doing, right? We might have a lot of reasons. And actually our habit brain is like, we'll keep some of those reasons. It's fine. We'll start tomorrow, right? Because there's still a part of you that doesn't fully want to make the change yet either. And so it can be easy to almost use the other person to keep and perpetuate a habit that you truly don't want long term. So if this is you again, I want to offer to you 3 things and kind of 3 steps to overcome this. And the first is to simply know why you are changing your habit. Why do you and why is it important to you to not eat in front of the TV and to eat your meal somewhere else? And you want to really understand why you are doing that. And it may be because you want to be able to understand how food truly tastes when you are eating it. I cannot tell you how many times I've been shocked that when I take a distraction away from when I'm eating something, how I realize many times that the food doesn't actually taste as good as I thought it did. And I actually recently had this experience with some potato chips. I don't often eat potato chips, and for those of you who've been listening for a while, I'm pregnant, almost 8 months pregnant when I'm recording this. And I go through these weird phases of like, that sounds so good and that sounds so good. And then food sounds terrible. And so lately I've been on like a potato chip. Like I just want a couple potato chips. And I ate them while I was watching TV. So for me, I don't never eat while I have a distraction. But for me now, it's so easy to know how much and to easily stop. And I pretty much I never really overeat when I am watching TV. And so it's not really something that I worry a lot about. And so there are times where I will get a little bowl and I will just eat a little popcorn or have a piece of chocolate. And there is a distraction on. So again, I'm not saying that this is something you do forever, but because eating this way is so innate and natural, and because I am at the weight I want to be at, it's just not a big deal for me. But then, the next night I was just eating a couple of these potato chips while I was talking to my husband about his day. And I was just like, did those taste better last night? Because I had TV on and then I was eating them and I'm like, I actually don't know that I really like these. And I was so surprised. And so I've had that experience numerous times where I take the distraction away and I really let myself enjoy the taste of the food, right? Because it's so ironic that we will tell ourselves, I used to tell myself, I love the taste of food so much, I could never stop eating. It's always going to be hard for me to stop eating. But then the irony is, I would tell myself how much I love the taste of food, but then I would be eating food with a distraction and not actually even noticing the taste, right? It was just I loved the habit of it. I didn't necessarily love the taste of it. And so when you take the distraction away, a lot of times you will surprise yourself at how you actually enjoy or don't enjoy certain foods. So that may be one reason why you want to change your habit. And I actually think it's so magical because what often happens is your tastes will actually start to align more and more with food that feels good in your body. So for me and for many women, the more and more you listen to your body's hunger and listen to how food tastes and how food feels in your body, the more and more you actually experience the taste of food in a way that's very naturally aligned with how it feels in your body, which makes it so much easier to keep choosing food that tastes good and feels good and not even want the food that doesn't feel good in your body. So another reason may be that you just feel calmer when you aren't feeling and having distractions like the TV or something on in the background. Maybe you want to really get to know your hunger and you find it more challenging when you have the TV on. And for a lot of you, especially with the TV, it's easier to stop eating when the TV's not there and the TV's not on and you haven't created and you're not eating out of association between the TV and the food. And so again, you just want to know why you want to change that habit. And you want to know why now. And almost more importantly, I think, which is going to help with steps 2 and 3, is that you really, really think about yourself 1 year, even a month out, even a week out. But I like to sometimes think okay, a year out, 3, 5 years out, that version of me that just has the exact relationship with food that I want. I'm at the body weight I want. That version of me, why is this change I'm making now so important to her? Why is she so appreciative that I made this change? And the more you can connect to that version of you, the more willing you will be to go through the change process. So while the first step is knowing why you're changing your habit, the second step is to expect it to feel uncomfortable. And the clearer you are on number 1, why you're changing it, why your future self is thankful that you're changing this habit, the more willing you are and the more willing you will be to embrace the temporary discomfort, the temporary uncomfortable feelings for the long-term gains. And so when you're changing a habit, and if you and your partner are used to watching TV and eating dinner together that way every night, and then you decide to make a change, you want to expect that it's going to probably feel uncomfortable. Probably going to feel uncomfortable for you because you're making a change and all the things your brain is telling you about that habit, but then all of the things your brain is going to tell you about what the other person is thinking. And so you want to just go into that experience expecting yourself to feel uncomfortable. I think a lot of times we want to fix that discomfort, but instead I want you to just expect that you can feel that discomfort and actually see how much more in control and how much more powerful you are than that discomfort. So here's how I suggest you go about that you go in with that expectation, first of all, and then let's say you're sitting and eating your dinner while your spouse or partner is on the couch eating their dinner, and you're feeling uncomfortable. You want to just ask yourself, okay, can I name this feeling that I'm having? If I was going to give it a one-word emotion name, what would it be? Are you feeling guilty? Are you feeling obligated? Are you feeling anxious? Are you feeling pressure? And just check in and see if you can understand and potentially name the emotion. And if not, just tell yourself you're feeling uncomfortable. That's totally fine too. But the more aware you can start to be and practice understanding particular emotions, it will just make it easier to understand what's causing it. So then you want to ask yourself, okay, what's causing me to feel this way? And it's not that the other person is sitting on the couch. It's going to be your thoughts about their position on the couch with their plate of food, right? The circumstance is there's a human sitting on the couch eating food, and there's you maybe sitting at a table eating food. That is not causing your feeling. It's the way your brain is interpreting that fact that is causing your feeling and or feelings of like guilt or obligation and discomfort, anxiety, pressure, whatever those feelings are. And so you want to just know, what am I thinking that is making me feel this way, that is causing this emotion in my body? And when you do this, you will start to see that you are the one causing it, not necessarily the situation. And so it may be because you're telling yourself, this is so selfish of me. He's going to be mad at me. He's going to think I don't want to be with him. He's going to think I'm judging him for eating on the couch. Whatever you're thinking, you want to just know that you are the one thinking that. And so when you start to change this habit, the point isn't to like try to convince yourself of something else to make yourself feel better. The only way you're going to feel better long term is you need to know what's creating the discomfort now. And so you just want to be aware of it. You just want to expect that you're going to feel uncomfortable, see if you can name the emotion that you're experiencing, and then just ask yourself, why? What am I telling myself? What sentences are going through my brain? What thoughts am I having right now that is creating this uncomfortable feeling? And then once you've done that and you've kind of just let yourself sit with that feeling without trying to make it go away, what a lot of people notice is that that feeling starts to vibrate in their body. And it's okay that it's vibrating there. It's part of you making a change. And you might keep going back to that future you that's like, so grateful you did this. And why is she grateful you did this? And that's why I had that really be number one, is because you want to go back to your reasons of why you want to make this change, because that will enhance your willingness to embrace this temporary discomfort. So you're going to understand your own discomfort, what's creating it. And then the third thing is that you're going to let the other person have their feelings. It's okay that they are uncomfortable potentially with you making a change. A lot of times we want to solve someone else's feelings of discomfort, whether they're real or perceived, right? The other person may not care at all. But if they do care, and maybe they express that they care, we sometimes want to solve that with our own actions that don't then align with how we want to continue to live. So if you try to solve someone else's discomfort around you changing a long-term habit that you have around food, and you want to solve that by taking your food and going and sitting on the couch and sort of appeasing them, a lot of times then we just build up some resentment and we build up some frustration. We're frustrated with ourselves. We're frustrated with them. And then what happens? You're doing the exact opposite of connecting with them. You're feeling resentful of them. And then you're maybe regretting that you did that because then you overate and you're not feeling good in your body. And it just leads to this spiral of you not only not being honest with yourself, but not really being honest with the other person. And it's very disconnecting. So it's really important that you let the other person have their own feelings. And remembering that, of course, we don't create someone else's feelings. They are in charge of their own feelings, and they are in charge of their own thoughts, and they are in charge of managing all of that for themselves. But at the same time, we can understand why they might be feeling a little bit bummed out, or they might be like kind of grieving this part of your relationship. And I'm going to talk about what to do with that in a moment. But you just want to notice that you may have a strong urge to want to solve their discomfort. And some of us have a stronger urge to do that than others. And I know sometimes we call it like people pleasing, and we want to kind of fix it for other people. And we do things for other people that aren't necessarily in alignment with what we want for ourselves and what we want long term. And I know for me, I have a strong urge to do this that I've had to practice at getting better and better and better and better at letting other people feel their own discomfort without me trying to solve it for them. And I know for me, it's taken me a lot of practice to kind of like allow that urge in my body to want to fix someone else's discomfort with my own actions in a way that I like really don't want to do, but I just like want them to stop being uncomfortable so badly that I almost like sacrifice what I would do in the absence of their discomfort. And so you just want to notice and probably expect that you may experience that. And that does not mean that you need to be unkind or you need to be disrespectful. And like I said before, you can understand, right? Potentially what they're thinking, and you can have a lot of compassion for them. We don't necessarily know exactly what someone is thinking unless they tell us what they are thinking, assuming, right, they're telling us honestly, right? But we can understand that they're maybe bummed out that you're not sitting there with them eating dinner anymore. We can understand how hard it is to change a habit. And so it makes sense that they're maybe struggling with that same habit. Maybe there's a part of them, let's say, that maybe they want to lose weight too. And they see you making a change, and then it just kind of reflects some of their own internal frustration or their own internal regret or their own internal shame that they may be already experiencing. And it comes out in a way that maybe is not what you want to hear from them. And so I just think when you can have a lot of compassion and understanding for someone else maybe not wanting you to change a habit, you can see where they're coming from. And then when you follow those 3 steps of knowing why you are changing the habit for you, expecting it to feel uncomfortable, letting them have their feelings, it doesn't need to be like a combative or argumentative or like any sort of like tumultuous part of your relationship. And then the last thing that I want to offer to you is that then you will be able to foster connection in a different way. Because if you continue to engage in a habit that you don't really want just because you're feeling obligated because someone else is doing it and you're trying to fix their feelings, then you start to build up some of that resentment. It does create that disconnection. But when you engage in a habit, let's say, of not eating in front of the TV, and you're feeling much better in your body, and you're really glad that you took, even those 15 minutes to do that for yourself, then maybe you get to come back to the couch and be with them. And maybe you choose not to have food when you're on the couch, and you expect that maybe that is also a little uncomfortable. And again, they're going to have their feelings about it, and you want to know why you're making that change. But then when you're sitting there and you're feeling really physically good in your body, you're really proud of yourself that you just did that, you're understanding where the other person is coming from, and you're not kind of building any internal frustration or resentment, you're going to be able to feel the emotion of connection and love much more strongly in your own body. And then you may also think about for yourself long term, if this isn't the way that you want to connect with that person, how do you want to connect with them? You may find more genuine and authentic and exciting and fun ways to create that connection with them. And you may be able to continue to foster that connection sitting on the couch, or maybe there are other ways that you work together to create more and more of that connection. So imagine from the other person's perspective, if their perspective is that you are taking connection away, and then you feel very defensive and argumentative about why you're doing it, they're just going to think you keep taking something away from them. But if you approach it this way, then you can actually add in more connection than they think you're taking away, right? You're not taking away their own feeling of connection, right? We're not that powerful, but they could be perceiving it that way, and they may be having that sense and that feeling. And so then if you can add in more of your own connection, they're going to feel that connection. And so again, it's not like you're trying to fix their feelings, but if connection is really important to you and love is really important to you, you can add that in an even greater way that goes way beyond any habit that you have that centers around food. And the other way you can foster this connection is to explain to them, if it is something that they don't enjoy, that you've maybe made this decision, you can explain to them why you are doing it for you. You're not trying to convince them to do it with you. Now, maybe you did have a conversation about it with them, but if they've decided that's not a change they want to make, you're not trying to convince them to do it with you. You're not trying to tell them what they're doing is wrong. You're just telling them why it's important for you. And when you have compassion and understanding as far as where they're coming from, and you're just vulnerable and honest about why you are doing this for you, and you make it nothing about them, that will create stronger and deeper and more intimate connection. So if you follow this, I think you can go from feeling like you're in a lose-lose battle situation where you're feeling resentful and you can't change a habit to feeling so much more connected, feeling better physically in your body because you're caring for your body in the way you want. You're getting to know your hunger and how food really tastes and your satisfaction level, and you're not having that distraction. You're taking care of your body physically in that way. But then that connection and love and intimacy can actually be greater. So you can go from a lose-lose to potentially a win-win if you approach making a long-term habit change this way. So again, like I said, I just gave you the example of eating with someone while you're watching TV, because I know that that is so common for so many of you, but you can apply this to any food habit when other people are involved. All right, friends, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast episode. And if you did enjoy this podcast episode, I have a favor to ask you. Can you write and leave a review wherever you listen to the podcast? So whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, any platform you use to listen to this podcast. If you could share with me what your favorite takeaway is, what you've learned, what you wish other people would know, whatever has been maybe some of the most impactful lessons you've learned or things you've applied or results that you have had in your life, if you could leave that in the review, I read every single review that you all write. And when you take a minute to do that, it also helps the podcast reach other people who maybe wouldn't have even known that this podcast existed. And so every time you leave and write a positive review, it helps other women who didn't even know that it was possible for them to lose weight this way, who didn't even realize that they could live in their dream body, feeling peaceful and free. It helps them know that it's possible and to get started doing that with this podcast. So I just want to say thank you in advance for taking a minute to do that. I hope you all have a great week, and I will talk with you all next time. Hey friend, if you're enjoying the podcast, I invite you to come and check out the Naturally Thin for Life membership at naturallythinforlife.com/join, where you'll learn the full Naturally Thin method broken down into simple and doable steps so that you lose the weight you want peacefully and rapidly and keep it off with ease for the rest of your life. The Naturally Thin for Life membership provides you with the tools to not only lose the weight you want, but customize your mindset and your habits to your unique body and life. As part of the membership, you also get an implementation workbook to ensure your inevitable success. Head over to naturallythinforlife.com naturallythin.com/join to get an inside look and tour of the Naturally Thin for Life membership. Hear from countless women who've utilized the tools and the extraordinary successes they've been able to achieve. I hope you join us over there at naturallythinforlife.com/join.